Hello, my name is Jaynie Seal and I am the anchor of Headline News. I'm also the anchor of Weekend Edition at Sky News, and I'm really excited to be joining GQ to host the second of their Big Ideas virtual sessions. Now, we kicked off 2 weeks ago with a look at, the places of sport in Aussie culture 2 decades after the iconic Sydney Olympic Games. And now we are looking at a topic, a very interesting topic that has been on most of our minds lately, and that is the future of work. So it's fair to say that, the way we work is something that we've all had to think a lot about more, certainly in recent months. But the global pandemic has really threatened so many industries, as most of us know, but it has also reshaped our approach to work, whether it's working from home, to the way we think about travel, access to the internet, or even childcare. So it's certainly something that we've all been thinking about. For my guests today, though, and they are truly inspiring, and you're going to have a lot of fun with them, the way we work is certainly somewhat of an obsession. So these two figures, they are at the absolute forefront of defining not only how we work today, but also looking ahead at how that will change in the years ahead. So my first guest is Dr. Catriona Wallace, a woman who loves robots, mostly because she thinks that they will be running our lives pretty soon. Now, Dr. Cat is the CEO of Ethical AI Advisory and is also the founder of Flamingo AI, which is an artificial intelligence software, and it's a company based in the US and Australia. She's formerly a police officer and a nightclub owner, and she's now one of the world's most cited commentators on AI, and certainly for ethics and the future of work. And she sits on the boards of BOAB AI and Responsible Technology Australia. Would you believe she's also a human rights activist, also an environmentalist, and is a mother of 5. Now, I'm also joined by Dominic Price, a work futurist for Australian software juggernaut Atlassian. Originally hailing from Manchester in the UK, his career has taken him all over the world before landing in Atlassian's Sydney's office. So there, his focus is basically all about discovering new, innovative and healthy ways of working. So that's to help companies adapt to changing times and really get the most out of their teams. He also regularly writes on everything from boosting productivity and fostering creative workplaces to workplace trends, shaping the future, and was also recently announced as one of the speakers of next month's TEDx Sydney events. Very impressive, these guests, aren't they? So before we get started, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge our partners, as GQ's Big Ideas sessions would not be possible without their support. So a big thank you to our presenting partner Optus and supporting partner Paco Rabanne Fragrances. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we're meeting today. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and so does the panel, and also to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people of other communities who may be on this platform today. So it's my absolute pleasure to introduce our guests for this evening, Dr. Catriona Wallace and Dominic Price. Let's get started. Hello to you both. I'm so excited.
I'm excited. I'm raring to go.
Oh, I tell you what, I have had a good look at both of your CVs, and I've had a look at the videos and everything, and so inspiring. Now, Dom, I'm going to start with you first because I wanted to, obviously you've got a very cool job title, a futurist. Can you explain exactly what a futurist does?
Yeah, it's an amazing made-up job, but we made it up on purpose because our mission is to unleash the potential in every team. And we decided a few years ago that we can't build today what you need today. We need to build today what you don't know you yet need tomorrow. And so we realized we needed to understand more about the future, more of that inherent uncertainty, changes in skills, jobs, demographics, generations, technology, people, place, like all the things that impact how we work. We need to have a comprehensive understanding of it, not to guess or predict what's going to happen in the future, but to start to experiment and explore, which is where I think Katrina and I complement each other because a massive aspect of that exploration is in technology.
You put it so well. We're obviously at a very unusual time, aren't we, because of what's happening with the pandemic, but also, it's a good time as well in terms of these people and these innovations just changing because we're being slammed with such a enormity. But do you think some of these short-term changes, Dom, are actually going to become more permanent?
Yeah, I don't think they're short term. I think a lot of the changes we're seeing in where people work, so workplace, the remote work versus work from office, the construct of 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, that's needed an overhaul for a long period of time. Just the idea that there's any correlation between a physical office desk and someone's productivity is indeed challenging for about 100 years or so. And so all these things were changing slowly. I think what COVID's done is pour accelerant on them. And I think there was a period of time when a lot of leaders maybe held their breath and they're like, we'll wait this out and it'll change and then we'll go back to normal. There's no going back, right? That we are going to build a new normal. And I think it's behest on us to work out what that new normal can be and start taking action on it today.
It's so interesting that you say that new normal because, you do hear that a lot, and it's a new normal. Dr. Cat, given so many people have been working from home, and obviously we're doing all this tonight, do you think there will be much more focus at all on technologies that will allow us to work remotely?
Yes, they will. And we've already seen companies like Zoom be used universally almost across the world. And I noticed that Zoom's share price went up something like 29 times their revenue in the last couple of months. So definitely communication technologies, but we're also seeing in the field that I'm in, artificial intelligence, in the last quarter globally, there's been a 19% increase in investment into the sector. Now, AI is the fastest growing tech sector in the world. $38 billion invested just in the last 12 months. We're going to see that grow exponentially. And I agree with Dom. It was growing anyway, but we've now seen COVID jump up the use of and the investment in emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence to really support workers, from people working from home, but also access to information and collaboration.
Absolutely. And will the recent events, do you think, accelerate some of those developments, as you've been mentioning, that might be on the horizon?
Yes, well, we as sort of AI trend analysts think that probably at least 30% of workers will never go back to work in the normal way that they were doing before. So then we'll become much more reliant on technologies. We also know that artificial intelligence over the next 3 years, 80% of technologies will have AI as a foundational component. So I'm banking, Jaynie, absolutely yes. Technology will become a much more important aspect than it already is. And in my way of thinking about it, it's the human plus machine. We're entered that fourth industrial era. Human plus machine is the way we must think about everything now. And in fact, I work with organisations in the US and Australia doing their organisational charts, where there are human employees and digital employees now.
It was interesting, Dom. I was looking at a couple of your videos, doing some research, and one thing that really stood out to me is you said, one who adapts the fastest will live the longest. I really like that quote that you did mention. On the other side of things, do you think, Dom, do you think organisations will be more flexible in where their workforce is based, or even how they actually spend their time? I mean, could this be the end of the daily commute, as we've been talking about?
My answer is hope. And I use that word on purpose. I hope that we understand that flexibility is a good thing. I hope that organizations understand that if you hire fully formed adults, you can trust them and empower them and give them autonomy, and they can do amazing work. And it doesn't have to be clock in, clock out, right? That's what I hope for. We've also got to remember that there's so many institutions with hundreds of years of heritage, and they think the old ways of working are the great ways, right? They've not yet paid homage and had the wake for them and said it's time to move on. They're still holding grimly to the past. And I think that challenge is important for leaders to say, how do we stay relevant? How do we understand? But to challenge Kat's point before, there's another side to technology that we need to be aware of, which is, I think for a long time, humans have convinced ourselves that we control technology, and that's actually been the case, but that's not true anymore. Right, the technology Kat's talking about is actually replacing, right? It's actually smarter or better than us in some regards. And where it's definitely better is efficiency, right? Because machines work 24/7. They don't take sick leave. They occasionally get a bug, but not coronavirus. right? But they work 24/7 and they are reliable at churning high volume stuff. And so I think there's a time in history, a recent history, where humans have been trying to compete with robots. We need to get rid of that. Like, we can't compete. They are better, faster, more efficient than us. What we need to do is to remind ourselves what those uniquely human skills, right? Curiosity, empathy, vulnerability, creativity, playfulness, right? The stuff we're born with that unfortunately our education system kind of beats out of people. And that's the stuff that we need to tap into so that humans can be a great version of ourselves and be complemented by the technology that Kat's mentioning.
Yeah, you make some great points. And Dr. Kat, you were also, I mean, you look at how work itself is evolving, particularly with your focus on AI. So, I mean, just how quickly is that space changing? Because as Dom just mentioned, you know, with COVID, like, we've just been forced into all of this change, which has been fantastic, but it's, you know, trying to keep up with it. How quickly has it changed?
Yeah, very quickly. So we talk about AI doing three things with regard to future of work. So one is augmenting, so it augments humans, so humans can work with robots or machines. Two is it amplifies existing systems, so it should be looked at not like a tool or an application, but a power source that amplifies existing technology or other systems. And then it automates, so it does things that humans traditionally would do. So that is augment, amplify, and automate. And what the analysts predict, so Gartner is suggesting that within the next 4 years, 40% of jobs in service and administration, and particularly across banking, insurance, retail, hospitality, tourism, and the service jobs, 40% of those jobs will be done by virtual assistants or robots within the next 4 years. And 30% of all customer interactions will be handled by robots and machines rather than humans. So that's the speed at which it will go. And what is very interesting, Jaynie, is that we'll see a good percentage of jobs being removed, which worries me for a couple of reasons. One is that 90% of those jobs, and again, Gartner predicts in the next 12 months, it'll be 1.8 million jobs globally taken by machines and robots. 90% of those jobs will be the jobs of women, minority groups, and then the entry-level jobs will be automated, would traditionally be the jobs of young people. So there's a big risk coming, but Gartner also predicts that 2.3 million jobs will be created because of the coming of AI. Yeah. And so unfortunately it won't be those who lose their jobs to be the ones who get the new jobs, but somewhere in there we need to figure out how we manage this.
Well, I mean, it's a big question, and it's obviously you guys are so expert in this field, but it's like, you know, just looking at those stats that you've just given us, how is that all going to work? Because I mean, before COVID and all of that, it was just, you know, it was hard enough for everyone to sort of keep up, not everyone, but a lot of people to keep up with that type of technology. But now you're saying with this and what in the space of 4 years, you've got that high percentage of people potentially losing jobs. And let's face it, and tell me if I'm wrong, because I'm certainly, you look at, you know, the younger generation, they've been brought up. I've got a 9-year-old and a 13-year-old that knows a lot more about technology than I do. So that's because they have been, you know, brought up with that whole scenario. So it's hard to shift a person that has potentially like an older brain. How do we deal with that?
I mean, I think to be fair, people talk about digital natives, digital immigrants. And I think that's a binary view of the world, right? I'm officially a digital immigrant, right? I grew up in an analog world and converted as a teenager, so I can empathize with both. Yeah. But I think if you have the power of unlearning and you can sort of retire old habits, rituals, knowledge, and then empower yourself to learn new ones, anyone can reinvent themselves. I think the challenge here, though, is if you look at the stats, technology's created more jobs in the last 150 years than it's taken away. But that stat hides the displacement that Kat just talked about. Right? The largest employer in the US by role right now is driver, either Uber driver or truck driver, right? Autonomous vehicles are going to come along soon and they're going to be displaced. Unfortunately, as Kat kind of just mentioned, they're not going to become UX designers in San Francisco. And so the weird thing is we've been sat on this data for years. We know reskilling is required. You see some first movers. So a year ago, Jeff Bezos and Amazon put aside $1 billion to retrain 100,000 Amazon employees that they will displace through automation, right? They're preparing their employee base. But there's a lot of argument around, is it business's responsibility or the community or society or education or the government or people? And you're like, hang on, we can see this is happening. And if we believe COVID's poured accelerant on it, it's going to happen quicker. Let's prepare ourselves for this so we don't end up in a state of mass inequity that we then have to try and fix. Because if you wait till you lose your job to retrain for the next job, it's probably too late.
Which comes back to that quote that I heard you before, Dom, saying, the one who adapts the fastest lives the longest. That is so, I don't know, it resonates a lot with me in what is happening.
But it just challenges our whole education system. Like, well, I mean, I'm old enough and stupid enough to, when I graduated in the year 2000, I thought that was it. I'm like, I'm done with education. I'll work for 45 years. I'll retire, and then I'll push up daisies. Like, there was this like uniform linear plan. And then I've realized over the last 20 years of my career, I've learned more in the last year than in the previous 3 years put together, right? Because you have to stay relevant. And so once we realize that and tap into lifelong learning, it's a very different mindset. But there's a whole generation of people in work right now that think they're working to retirement. And yet they're this kind of frozen middle layer that's going to get thawed out. And I think we need to be aware of that. It's whether it be true or not, we need to protect those people and help them discover that learning opportunity and future job opportunities.
So well said. And Dr. Cat, AI is often seen as a slightly ominous threat to everyday workers. But what do you think it will actually become more accepted that we will work alongside machines a lot more?
Yes, it'll just happen. Well, it is happening now, and we'll see that becomes the new norm. And I agree with Dom that there is a lot to be done on education and awareness about it. And in fact, the sad thing is Australia is very much a laggard in this field. So if we look at what the US spends per capita on investment in AI, it's about $20 a person. In Australia, it's about $2 a person. So in fact, Singapore, Hong Kong, Israel all spend much more money on investing in AI than Australia does. So I've been working with some of the politicians through this board I sit on, Responsible Technology Australia. We spend a lot of time lobbying the politicians to get up to speed with the fact that this is coming. We see great things such as this BOAB AI, Australia's first AI accelerator, just been announced. Now, the US has been having AI accelerators for probably the last 5 years. So unfortunately, Jaynie, we're well behind on this. Unless we start to ramp this up, we will be left behind.
Yeah. We don't want to be a net importer. We want to be a net exporter on this, not an importer.
So how do we do this, and how do we bring bring more focus to it in Australia?
I mean, I think one way is to acknowledge, again, it's this whole kind of acknowledge the past. Like, I'm a massive fan of mining, minerals, banking, and tourism, because they created this amazing country we all get to call home, right? I've lived here for 17 years, and I think it's a brilliant place. But our economic growth over the last 27 years has almost hidden a multitude of sins about how little we've invested in the future. And if you look at technology as an example, and I'm not going to go on the STEM bandwagon, I actually believe in STEAM, the combination of science, technology, engineering, maths, and arts, right? It's the fusion of those together. That's when amazing things happen, and that's where we need to be investing. And you look at countries, Kat's just listed off a low, but I did some research recently. In Vietnam, the second language of school children is coding. Right? We've got nations who are actually just embracing this and going, it just makes sense. But almost our success is hiding a multitude of sins, this need for us to not react or respond and actually wait for it to happen. But I think now is the best time for us to do it. I mean, the upheaval of COVID, the challenge to the entire system, is a great time for us to go, you know what? Let's build a better future than we had a past. And let's do that on purpose, not by accident.
And how that's going to work with the government in their budget highlights that they've suggested are coming is a recovery led on manufacturing and gas. So someone like me and Dom, we just go, oh, really? Manufacturing and gas, is that what Australia will build its recovery on? I'm really worried about that. We should be building it on technology being part of the recovery. And my thoughts, and shared by many analysts, is Australia would do really well at ag tech, and perhaps some bio and medical tech would be something that Australia would be outstanding to build its recovery on. But we'll see, Jaynie, at this point in time, we're not hearing that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, recently through COVID, the government announced that they were going to, subsidise some university degrees. Off the top of my head, one was psychology, for example. Do you think this is a good thing? Because if people sitting watching this event this evening, for example, have lost their job because of COVID, they could be a pilot, or it could be, highly skilled in their particular area, and whatever age or whatever skill, but they're going, okay, I'm going to have to reinvent myself because perhaps my job is non-existent, or they're sitting here going, okay, this is the way of the future. Whatever their circumstance is, what would you say to someone who perhaps has no idea about how to go to the AI worlds or the futurists? What would you give them in terms of where to go and start getting that knowledge?
I think one of the mistakes, let's start there, we make is we go back to the traditional well, right? We're like, we need to reskill. Thou must go to university. Please invest $50,000 in 3 years in learning something that may or may not be outdated by the time you're done, right? We've still got this binary view of the world, this waterfall view, versus going, you know what? Let's look at World Economic Forum future skills. Right, they predict 5-10 years out future skills, empathy, vulnerability, communication, and all these things where you're like, they're really key skills that you can get through practice, or they're skills that you can get through micro learning. You look at the sheer volume of webinars and content online for free right now. Like, why anyone would pay for an education at this moment in time, I don't know, because you can access a really good one online for free. You might not get the certificate at the end, but you get the knowledge and you get the wisdom and you get the people and the practices and the ability to apply that. So I would say look at future skills, look at transferable skills, not roles. People often identify themselves by roles rather than skills. The role of work futurist didn't exist when I went to uni. Right? I never had a career plan that had me getting to the age of 40 and anointing me a work futurist, right? It evolved over time through opportunistic behavior. So I think when people do that and they reskill constantly, they keep on evolving those skills, they make themselves more relevant. And I think that's something that we should all sign up for life, not just at the moment. It's not a point in time thing. I think it's something that we're all going to have to get better at over time.
Right. So you're saying not necessarily you need to go and study for 3 years and get that piece of paper that has a degree of this, that, and the other. It's like, just go and sort of, as you said, go online and work out all the different bits and pieces. But it is, look, to be honest, it does sound, it sounds daunting. And I guess I'm just trying to put myself into someone's shoes and go, okay, well, where do I start? Like, do you know what I mean? It's that whole kind of, yes, you've got to look at these different things, but with the whole internet and there's so many things online and so available, I guess, I guess you do go, okay, well, these are my skills that I have now. Where can I, tune them into?
Yeah, and I would pick up on what Dom's saying, and the way in the AI philosophy world we think about things is that AI should come and automate things that are routine, allowing humans and workers to be more human, to go back to the arts, to basic science, to psychology, to philosophy, to human relationships and complex problem solving. So there is great hope, but my suggestion would be, and I completely agree with Dom, people don't need to go to university. There's so much online podcasts, books that they can read. So a couple of great books offhand for me would be The Most Human, What AI Teaches Us About Being Alive, Human Plus Machine, Invisible Women. These are all fabulous books that you could read and know most that you need to know about AI. So no need to go to formal education. And even the coders, a lot of my engineers don't have formal qualifications. These were just guys that were very good at gaming and then fell into AI because it was cool and played around with it. So they don't even need formal engineering qualifications. This will be the new world.
Great. I was thinking, gee, what am I going to do? Go to university and get some sort of degree? But it's
great.
And also, what do you think about self-awareness? Because I'm a big believer in, if you know yourself, then you can be the best worker, the best parent, the best, partner. Getting to know yourself, how important do you think that is?
Kat, you can go first.
Yeah, look, I've got to say it is super important, but I always, when you read books and hear inspirational people and, know yourself, and you go, what does that actually mean? Well, this is my experience being an entrepreneur, and I talk about the way I've got to know myself and to build my confidence is by having epic fails along the way. And even recently I said, my entrepreneurial journey was to the gates of entrepreneurial hell and back. And so I think people learn about themselves by certainly achieving goals, but we mostly learn by not achieving and failing and picking ourselves up and dusting ourselves off and then finding a mentor or an advisor to try and get us back on. And my theory is 3 big fails, you pretty much know yourself.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a very sort of strange conversation with someone a while ago, which is, if you know that you've not got self-awareness, are you self-aware? And I liken it to the growth mindset. Right? I've never met anyone who admitted to having the fixed mindset. Everyone thinks they've got the growth mindset, but surely we can't all have it. And so you get to the point of going, you know what? Let's stop the conversation. It's got to be action, right? It's all action orientated. I do an exercise every 90 days on myself as a leader, where I reflect on the previous 90 days. I shine a mirror in front of myself and I ask myself 4 questions. What did I love? What did I long for? What did I loathe? And what did I learn? Right? I do more of the loved. It's my superpower, unapologetic. I'm awesome at it. I'm going to do more of it. The loathed, I remove, and that's my permission to add in the longed for. And then the learn is the same as Kat. What's the thing that I probably had an epic failure on? What did I learn from that? Rather than sobbing into my beer or wine and saying how upset I am that I got it wrong, what can I learn from that to do differently next time? And that forms my personal action plan every 90 days. So I have to remove the loathed before I add in the longed for. And it's this amazing exercise of going, the first time you do it, the rational brain kicks in. You're like, I'm fine. I'm busy. I've got a lot on. I'll do it next quarter. I'll do it next. In fact, I'll do it next year. In fact, I'll do it next millennia when I've got some more time. We've all got 24 hours in the day, right? We can't create more time. We've just got to prioritize. And so I'm like, I have to take stuff out. I have to remove the loathed before I add in the longed for. And that's the way of building that muscle. And so you can read a book on self-awareness, just like you can read a book on vulnerability. Yep. I work with plenty of leaders that use the word vulnerability a lot and demonstrate none of it. And I'm like, stop saying it, start doing it.
Yeah, practice what you preach. It's I remember a child psychologist we spoke to a couple of weeks ago, and there was a term called internal and external locus of control. And it's like, you can blame the other people, and if you have that external locus of control, it's like, oh, because there's a pandemic or because of this or because of that. And it's like blaming, and it's very general what I'm saying, and I'm not saying that I'm a psychologist, but just what I learned. And then that internal, where you've said, you self-reflect and you go, okay, this is what happened. This was a good achievement. This is not the greatest achievement, but how can I improve on the not so great achievement? And how can I continue seeing the ones that has worked? So yeah, it's we've got to stop, perhaps not all of us, but that whole victim sort of thing, and just move on and just go on. Life's too short. We've got to get moving. But I want to ask both of you as well to get out your crystal ball, and what are going to be some of the biggest changes, do you think, in the years ahead in the way we work? Who wants to start?
I might go first. I think it's time for us to celebrate and challenge the constructs. 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, have to be enough. The association of where we work with how we work, all those things need to be overhauled and turn up. And then we need to do that with the purpose of adding flexibility, diversity, and inclusion. Because if we take away the construct of 9 to 5, Monday to Friday in the office, it means that people with caring responsibilities can access the workforce. It means that the disabled that can't physically get into an office can access the workforce. And there are so many people out there with amazing brains and amazingly curious hearts that can't access the workforce right now. When we get those people in, we get diversity, we get inclusion, we get more innovation. They're happier, the employers are happier, and the customers are happier. It is a genuine win-win-win, but we have to do it on purpose. It won't happen by accident.
Awesome. And Dr. Kat?
Yeah, so I think it's going to be all about digital. So getting a digital mindset and for workers to become digital savvy, regardless of what field that they're in. If they're in human resources or procurement, they need to start to learn about what digital is. And we talked about before how actually pretty easy that is to do. So that's one thing. Second thing, there definitely will be human plus machine. And what we will see is, I believe we're in a path at the moment just before we go into transhumanism. So transhumanism is where software is embedded in our bodies. If you think where we've come from, so previously we had mainframes down the road in an office, then they were in an office in our building, then they were in our computers on our desk, then they're in our smart devices. The very next step is for software to be in our bodies. And Elon Musk 2 weeks ago released his first demonstration of the neural link, which is the first non-biological brain chip. So we're very close to this. So I would also expect that we have technology become part of our working life, more than just a tool that we use on a desktop, either on our bodies or in our bodies, to help us be more productive, more efficient, and to think faster. So I think that'll happen. But one of the important things I think too, Jaynie, is when the machines come and automate these things, what is left, and Dom has already mentioned some of them, empathy, compassion, creativity, critical thinking, being visionary. These are things associated typically with the feminine archetype. So I do see that the coming of the machines, surprisingly, will help us bring some of those qualities, not necessarily just associated with women, but with the feminine, into the workforce. And I think, as we can see at all levels, particularly in politics at the moment, we desperately need that.
Do we?
Well, the three countries rated as being the best on COVID response are all led by women.
Yes, absolutely. Well, yeah, it is very interesting to see. And as you said, that's what robots don't have, the empathy and so forth. I've got a couple of questions that have come through. So from people listening, I don't know who wants to answer this one first, but who are some business leaders that you admire or look up to? Do you want to both answer that one?
Kat, you can go first.
Yeah. So there's two that comes top of mind, and the first is Melanie Perkins, who's the founder of Canva. So I think Melanie is just an incredibly brilliant entrepreneur who's built an incredible company in Canva, and she's so elegant and so feminine, yet has done an extraordinary job. So definitely Melanie. And then Ben Horowitz is the other one. So Ben Horowitz wrote the book The Hard Thing About Hard Things, and he was originally one of the entrepreneurs in Netscape. And anyway, he's had a journey similar to mine, lots of highs and some terrible lows. And he talks about when the entrepreneur gets into what's called the struggle, which is when everything you dreamed about just turns to shit, right? And then how you come out of the struggle. And then he kind of concludes with the very, good entrepreneurs achieve goals, but the great entrepreneurs go through the valley of the struggle and come out on the other side. And certainly that Ben Horowitz got me through some dark days.
That sounds amazing. Okay, John?
I think for me, I'm extremely fortunate to work with two amazing inspirational leaders every day in Scott and Mike, our co-founders, who just don't drop a beat. There's nothing that happens around the world that stops their passion, their ability to challenge, provoke, dream big. It's just an endless supply. But on a sort of a more personal level, I had the pleasure a few years ago of hanging out a few times with Patty McCord from Netflix. Mm-hmm. And in hanging out, I'd read her book and I had this like massive crush on her. And then she said to me one day, she's like, here's my number. If you're ever in Santa Cruz, like look me up. And I thought it was one of those pretend offers. And I was in Santa Cruz one day and I looked her up and we got really drunk on Chardonnay. And the stories that I got that never made it into the book. Yeah. I mean, the book itself, her book Powerful, is amazing. It's an inspirational book. The stories that never made it into the book that you get in a bottle of Chardonnay are even better. She's a hilariously powerful, brilliant, unapologetic woman who swears like a trooper. And I love her to bits.
Need more of them, don't we? Especially these days where it's so PT. All right, so there's another question. How did you get into your field of work? And both of you. So I might go first. So for those who don't know, I'm a chartered accountant by trade. When I finished at university, my parents and family convinced me if I became a chartered accountant, I would have a job for life. We didn't realize I'd be terrible at it, and we didn't realize that it wasn't for me. And so I moved on from that, and I moved into technology. I moved into project management, program management, whole host of different stuff. My entire career has been opportunistic. It's about seizing opportunities that I wasn't sure I could do and going, sod it, I'll give it a red hot go. If I fail, I can always go back. And I've pursued that the entire way through, to the point where 4 years ago, we were chatting in Atlassian in a room about the idea of having a work futurist, and we decided we'd do a 3-month experiment. But in doing that, I had to hire my replacement for my old job. I'm like, yeah, I'll give it a go. We'll do the 3-month experiment. If it works, we'll do more of it. If it doesn't, it's fine. And that was 4 years ago. And we're still in that experiment now. And today bears no resemblance. I have no job description.
today bears no resemblance to the thing we started 4 years ago, but it's having the leap of faith in being opportunistic and just learning along the way. I have just this bizarre hunger for learning new things from new people.
That's awesome. So you're saying, because a lot of people go, okay, when I finish school, I want to be this and I need to go here and I need to be here, and it sounds quite rigid. I've never been like that. I've just kind of gone with the flow, whatever. But that sounds like it's something that obviously works for you, which is great to hear for people who may be thinking, oh, I don't have a plan. I
think it's quite generational. There's probably a couple of generations before us where the idea was you did a certain qualification and then you did that job for your life. Well, I don't think that ideal kind of exists anymore.
Yeah, good point.
I agree. Yeah. So my career started, I only ever wanted to be a farmer. Then I became a police officer, then a nightclub owner. Now, that was really useful in that order, being a nightclub owner after being a police officer. That worked well. Then I got a bit bored. I started a consulting company. I went and did a PhD. My PhD is in the role technology plays in replacing human leaders. So I started on the path of the human and machine. I built a co-founded a market research company, a human-centered design company, and then the Flamingo business. And so ended up being in quite masculine fields all the way through. And my role, I believe, is really to start to forge the way and break down some of the walls and the barriers for younger women coming through. That's kind of my purpose. But recently we have the Flamingo business was acquired. So I'm now at the stage where we're just finishing that up and looking to what the future might be. And I don't know necessarily what I'll do. And just as Dom said, I'm just going to wait and see what comes up and comes into my space that I'm interested in doing that has purpose and meaning. And so I say the same to particularly young people who are watching this. When people go, oh, what are you going to do? Very good for you to say, I don't know what I'm going to do, because most of the jobs that people who are at university are going to do in 5 years' time don't exist yet. Yep. Dom's job didn't exist 5 years ago. I hope to invent a job or do something, but actually I have no idea what I'm going to do.
It's fascinating, isn't it? We live in such amazing times. And as you said, back in the day, it was great to have you work for a company for 10 years and you get your long service leave, and that was respected. And, not to say that it's not, but as you say, both of you, it's like we are living in such a fast-paced, ever-changing world that who knows what the new jobs are going to be. Another question that's come through, will robots really ever take over?
Yes. Yes, they will. And you see Dom nodding there. So look, we predict the time of singularity, which is when the robots no longer need the human masters. They can learn on themselves, they can program themselves, they can control themselves, is about 20 years away. It's not in 1,000 years, in 100 years, it's about 20 years away, and probably possibly shorter than that. So yes, they will. And what is really important now is that we start putting ethical approaches to technology in place. And I did a big talk with Dom and the Atlassian and Mike Cannon-Brooks and the Atlassian team about 2 weeks ago in talking about this, and I was so impressed with how the Atlassian employees stepped up to want to take ownership of this. So we need ethical leaders. This is a new type of leader, because the government are about 5 years behind the technology, and the big tech giants are not taking responsibility to do ethical tech. So in order for this to go well for we humans, we must develop ethical leaders and do ethical technology.
So just to give an example there of how important that is, right? So when we get it wrong. So you look at the first ever airbags in cars, and when they were first released, they injured women and children because they were tested on men, because the people that invented them were all men. So they designed the strength of the airbag, the size of the airbag, for the average guy who was in a car, who was a different size, weight, and ratio to the average woman and child. And so you're like, cool, well, that was in like the 20s, 30s, 50s. We won't make that mistake again. And there is a certain technology company, when they rolled out their photo software a few years ago, identified African Americans as baboons. Because when they trialed the software internally, they had no African American people in the team. So it's not just ethics. We are going to design principles, philosophies, rules into this software that goes en masse. And so those ethics, that diversity, that of mindset, the ability to have compassion and understanding is going to be more important than ever before, because a mistake there will impact millions, if not billions of people, rather than just a few. So it's the ethics and that diversity together. And we've got recent history of where that goes wrong. Therefore, our time is now to get that right.
Well, it goes back to, doesn't it, the self-awareness, because you need to be that type of person. You can't be, I hate to put the labels on it, but a narcissist, for example, who doesn't see empathy and doesn't know empathy. So how do we, and there are a lot of leaders and CEOs, as you both know, that are in that role. And yes, there's a place for that sort of Teflon kind of mentality. But as you said, like, how are we going to, sift that out?
I got given some great leadership advice a few years ago. Argue like you're right and listen like you're wrong.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I loved it because I was like, oh, no, I argue like I'm right and I listen like I'm right. And that's the problem, right? Listening to correct, listening to wait for your chance to speak, all those things that you do when you're not actually listening to the other person, versus going, I've put my point forward with passion, and I'm now going to open these two big floppy things on the side of my head and just listen. And I'm probably wrong, and I'm going to absorb that and take it in. And then the idea is going to be better because of that. Right? It's not me protecting my baby. It's me enabling the idea to evolve because of that respectful dissent and diversity of opinion, which is that cognitive diversity is what I value. But you have to listen like you're wrong.
Because it's so true. Because, I mean, again, this is just a generalization, but maybe you can help me out here with what I'm trying to say is, when you look at a leader, for example, they're perceived, and this is just a generalization, they're perceived as, they have to be right. But a good leader, from what I've heard from other good leaders interviewing them, is they are not always wrong. And I guess that's what you're trying to say. Am I correct? Like, in terms of, you know what I mean? It's like, the leader has to know everything, but no, they don't. It's good not to. I mean, how can we all know everything, especially if you are a leader? You're not expected to, but it's that whole, I guess it's a generational thing. Is that, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's also this weird view we have that we need to be superhuman and wear a cape, and we don't. We're just human, right? It's fine.
Yeah.
I gave someone an example. I don't think I'm any more right now than I was 20 years ago. I just think the decisions I have to make are more complex. Right? As I've got more senior, I'm given more responsibility, but I'm about 50-50 on my decisions still. Right? I get half of them wrong, half of them right. It's fine. Right? You just got to live with it. But I've not got better at making, I think I've got better at making decisions because I'm making more complex decisions, but my hit rate's about the same.
I find it, the more I learn, I think the more I don't know. It's like, it's fascinating to learn and learn and learn. It's like, gee, I really don't know much at all, but it's like, and I've learned more than I had 20 years ago. And it's that kind of philosophy, isn't it? Gosh, I could talk to you guys forever. How are we going for time? Probably get the little dong. One more question. How will the evolution of work shape cities in the future?
Yeah, so, cities will shape work and work will shape cities. So we will see smart cities arising. So these are cities fully enabled with artificial intelligence, blockchain, Internet of Things, and 5G will probably enable it. So when these cities come alive and be smart and clever, then we will see that roll into work. So I think it'll probably be, it could be both actually, work that will influence how cities are developed, and this will already be the case because, what the hell's happening with corporate real estate? Hate to be in that field right now. So what will happen with workplaces, and then how do we enable with smart cities those workplaces? So I think the two things will go hand in hand.
Yeah, I'm going to politely disagree. Finally, I suspect we might get a bit of a revolt, and that people go, this whole pursuit of productivity, I can't be asked. You know what? I want to have fun. I want to be effective. I want to have an impactful life. And I think we'll see a return to the land. I think we'll see people return to more sort of manual work that's more enjoyable. I think more farming and people sort of self-sustaining. I think there'll be a whole weird shift back to that and almost away a little bit from technology, just like we've seen a little bit with social media. Like there's this constant rise, and then people kind of go, I feel like it's taken over my life, and a shift back. And I think what that will change is the whole concept of cities will change, because we'll be far happier being spread around and in communities, just like we kind of are right now. Like I was actually in the city the other week, and we couldn't get a coffee because the coffee shops were essentially closed. But my coffee shop in Neutral Bay is doing a roaring trade, but their trade is now bigger during the week, where it used to be weekend trade. right? And so you're like that, and they were even classed as a city, right? And so I think there's a whole lot of shifting plates and movements there of how people consider, their effectiveness in life, their impacts in life might actually start to switch as technology increases its impact. We might swing the other direction.
It's fascinating times. It'd be interesting to talk to you guys this time next year, or every year, just to go, okay, what's happened between now and then? But who knew with COVID, like the changes? And I know just so many things that I guess have been put forward, and homeschooling or home working. People who have got new children and they want to work from home, and they've tried to put that forward to their work, and then bang, it's happened, and they've got a case, and then it's like trying to follow that through. It's fascinating. You guys have such amazing jobs, brains. I'm incredibly inspired by both of you, but I do think we have to wrap it up. Before I do wrap it up, is there anything that either of you would like to say?
Just one thing from me, which is, if anyone sat there with an idea, go and do it. Don't wait for approval or permission or a business case or sanction or anything else. Just give it a red hot go, because I think we're about to enter a time of democracy where we get recognized for doing, not overthinking.
Can I ask a question with that? Because again, I'm just trying to empathize with people listening. To me, I'm picking up fear. Like, what is the fear? Because it's like, oh, I'm not going to be good enough. I'm going to be embarrassed, or it's not going to work. Or do you know what I mean? What advice would you give to someone that's sitting there going, oh, thanks, Dom, this is a really good idea, but why would they want my idea? Or some sort of fear. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the only way is to try. It's great, because if you never try, you'll never know, right? If you try, you find out one way or the other. So I'm very much a two-way door kind of guy. I'm going to walk through the door, see what's the other side. If I like it, I'll stay. If not, I'll pay a toll to come back through the door. Like, I'm fine taking those chances, because that opportunistic approach has got me where I am today. And so I don't bet the house, bet the company type ideas. But actually, if you look at the barriers to entry now, they're lower than they've ever been before. Right? You essentially need a laptop and a silly idea, and off you go. Right? You don't need huge amounts of capital or investment to give a new innovative idea a try. So I just encourage people, give it a try and learn along the way. And as Katrina talked about, the highs and the lows, that's what makes it fun. You don't just want highs all the time. Like, the lows when they're low are pretty bad, but then when you have the high again, you're like, oh, it's kind of cool. I learned from that.
Yeah.
And I've got just a little bit to add to that. So I say be bold. We're Australians. We have the privilege and the luxury, a lot of us, to be bold and to think beyond our own country, to think globally. So that's that. I also think that people should just know that when you're doing your own thing, everything is broken. Everything is broken, and your job as the founder or the CEO is to unbreak it. And then I think it is around just not needing to know what your future is. Just take opportunities, as Dom said before, follow them through, and try and not lose your passion and your heart on the way through. Hang on to purpose.
Gosh, great advice, isn't it? And especially, as you said, with passion, like if you do have an idea and you are so passionate about it, you're going to have that enthusiasm, and you're just going to be like, this is what it is. And the outcome, whatever the way is, you've got to learn and just let go of that fear, which I think is what a lot of people, would prevent them moving forward from. That's from what I've experienced myself and what I've heard as well. But right. Awesome. I don't know. I just want to talk to you forever. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. But we do have to wrap up, because I know we are out of time. But thank you so much to you, Dr. Catriona Wallace and Dominic Price, for your insights, for your wonderful advice, and I wish you both so much success. And I look forward to seeing what happens in the future with both of you. And thanks again to everyone for taking part in this second GQ Big Ideas session. GQ is going to be back within the next 1 to 2 weeks' time, and the next topic will be the future of politics. So that will be an interesting one as well. So make sure you head to gq.com.au to register. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great night.